We got into a conversation on the show today about the dangers regarding the party and about whether one was more dangerous than the other. Some people think that both of these guys are exactly the same, or both of these guys are basically equal, or that Democrats are more dangerous than Republicans. I think those people are insane. It's not so much that Democrats don't have their own religious stuff and make up their own stuff. It's not even that they repudiated the results of the election when Donald Trump got elected, even though they did it in a very specific way. The difference here has to do with what the different religions believe. Whereas you have a Democratic Party that is just weak and incompetent, and yes, they're doing things on curtailing speech and everything else. Those things are horrible things, but those things are part of the religious belief to try to get them guys elected and keep them guys in power, despite the fact not doing anything real from saying a point, let's say like HR 1 or something like that, or ensuring that you pass policies that the American public enjoys, appreciates, can feel in their pockets and weigh in their hands, and give you votes and support for doing it. No, I'm talking about a situation where one party basically drinks blood and the other party hits itself in the head with a board. The party that hits itself in the head with a board is stupid, it's worthless, it's incompetent on some level. By the same token, it's hitting itself in the head with a board. And while they may have other consequences for people who need that person, who need the cognitive capability of that person, who may depend on that person, ultimately, we're talking about something that is specific and isolated. The Republican Party en masse, a major political party of the United States, not a fringe group, not 2%, not we're talking about the Oath Keepers or the Boogaloo Boys who have X number of people we're not talking about that. We're not talking about a fringe political group. We're talking about the political party of the United States, one of the major political parties repudiating outright the election results, saying without evidence that Trump won. Now, people can bring up all of these, independent networks, evidence or whatever else. But the reality of it is, if Donald Trump cared that much, and with all of the money at his disposal, Donald Trump should have found those indie networks. Donald Trump should have went on Twitter and online and everything else and found those people and put that evidence in the various courtrooms. So Donald Trump wouldn't be looking crazy like this and basically, potentially, going to jail in a few years. No, he didn't do that because the stuff wasn't there. People can look at all sorts of stats and everything else and come up with things that confuse themselves in regards to what they're looking at. At the end of the day, with all of the incentive in the world, with all of the resources at his disposal, he just lost. And from the standpoint of trying to substantiate this notion of cheating or massive fraud that robbed me of my election result, got to show that, buddy. And if you're a billionaire, if you're the president, if you have all of these people around the world, if you have all of these court cases and the ability to make those court cases and try to make that point, and you don't do it, then yes, I'm going to think you're full of shit. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, far more than a lot of people did. I was perfectly okay with this notion of challenging the election results if there was indeed real fraud. I don't want anybody winning a race if they didn't win it. By the same token, you have to show that. It can't just be, I didn't win it because I won it because I won it, and I know it because I'm Trump. Donald Trump lies as easily as he breathes, and there is a litany of history of that. So the idea that a guy who's a habitual liar turns around and lies is not necessarily that surprising. The fact that you have a bunch of useful idiots that will go along with it either because they believe it or either because of their own political distinction, meaning I don't care whether Trump won or not. I would just want Trump in power, so I don't give a shit about the electoral process. Wherever they end up, they are coming to this kind of realizational conclusion that they are giving fealty and allegiance to Trump. And while they don't necessarily want to bring up this notion of having a fight about whether Trump won because they're embarrassed to have that fight, it's there. It's lurking. It's behind the scenes in regards to the logic and the way that they think and the way that they operate. And that has consequences if something like that gets into power and start making laws. I mean, for fuck's sake, you have Republicans in all of these states now. 99% of the laws that are being passed in order to curtail voting are coming from Republicans, over 90%. That's not a two-party thing. From the standpoint of incentives, Democrats' incentives are to expand voting to whatever they can expand voting to. The more people that you have to vote, the better the chance that Democrats have to win. Now, you can say, well, that's only because Democrats have a vested interest in expanding voting that they're doing so. Yes, that's probably true. When it was up for Sanders, they were acting just like Republicans in regard to cheating the vote tally, either expunging people from the records, moving the polling locations and all of that stuff. Yeah, they did the exact same behavior as Republicans. So this is no beauty in regards to the Democratic Party. It's just they have an institutional advantage on this particular issue. But that institutional advantage is irrelevant. Republicans will just have to come up with policies that people like. But instead of doing that, they decide we're going to fuck with the vote total. We're going to make it difficult for people to vote. We're going to make those lines longer. We're going to cut early voting. We're going to do things that basically attack a voting process. And when you think about what is a democracy, on some level, if it's not the ability for people to articulate their will through the ballot box and to have a person to represent their interests that they are voting for that gets legitimacy based on those votes, then what the hell does it mean when one of the major political parties has a vested interest in curtailing the number of Americans that vote? And even when those Americans went to the polls, voted the other Republican out, that Republican refused to accept the results. And because of the gravity, the force that's associated with that particular political actor, well, the other Republicans, despite many of which not liking Trump, bent the knee, golden Trump statue. So embarrassing. Chris Christie standing behind Trump for 15 minutes looking crazy. Just facial expressions. Donald Trump, at this point, is the gravity of the party. And the gravity of the party is not policy-oriented. The gravity of the party is not, here are these new policies that we're pushing as a Republican Party. That's not it. Liz Cheney voted with Trump like 90% of the time. Liz Cheney is on else. It has to do with allegiance. It has to do with fealty. It has to do with acknowledging that this person is the leader, the center of gravity, and to not trespass on this notion that that person failed miserably. 500,000 people died and he's shocked that he lost. My point is that the Republican Party, as a major party, has decided to repudiate America itself as an outright entity. Because if they are not repudiating America, how are they backing Trump? Donald Trump's main talking point is not policy. Donald Trump's main point is, I won this election, this was fraud, they cheated me out of this contest, and everything that takes place here is illegitimate. And if it is indeed illegitimate, and if indeed the country was taken, then everything is permitted. How's it not? If you're giving a speech and you're saying they stole this election from you, they stole your country, they stole this election, you were cheated, they ripped away. That is a crime, that is a magnificent crime, that is possibly the greatest of crimes. And in trying to take back what was stolen from you in regards to government, being a patriot, everything becomes permitted. The line of logic is difficult and problematic, especially when it's coming from one of the major parties. And when many of the Republican Party is basically lined up behind that falsehood. Caitlyn Jenner is running for office. Caitlyn Jenner, trans, she had her procedure, this was a few years ago, and she is now a media star, let's call it that. And doing this, she's deciding to run for office, she's running as a Republican. She comes onto The View, and Joy Behar asks her, Democrat, do you believe that Donald Trump won the election? Yes or no? That is a damn good question. And that is a question that Caitlyn Jenner in no way is going to answer. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you allowing me to do it. Guys, just as a heads up, I am being sent to Geneva to cover the Putin-Biden summit. Now, that means that if I'm going to be there covering the summit, you're probably not going to see me on the channel for a while, or if I do, it's probably going to be intermittent. I'm still going to be popping in and out of fault lines in order to give an update on what is taking place. Again, at this point, I'm being a journalist. I got my journalist credentials, which means I will be there. Hopefully, I will get the opportunity to ask Biden or Putin a question. No, that question is probably not going to be on UFOs. I don't want to get fired. But that's where I will be. So the next time you see me, short of doing a video, something like that before I go, it will be in Geneva, Switzerland. So wish me luck. Looking forward to it. And it should be a lot of fun. But I'm excited. I've never been to Switzerland, so there's that. And I've definitely never been sent anywhere for work reasons. And so there's a lot of firsts in this, and there's a lot of deep appreciation on it. I've been doing this for 6, 7 years at this point. 2 years, I think, or 1 year and a half or something like that on the show, maybe 2 or 3 if you include the time that I was doing pop-ins where I would come and just do visits for the network. And for a summit like this, and for the significance of a summit like this, for them to send me, or even care enough to do so, or even think, yes, we're going to do this. Yeah, I'm appreciative. I do think if I sucked at what I was doing, I don't think they would do it. If they hated me, which I typically think people dislike me, I don't think they would do it. And so there's something to be said for doing a task for X amount of time and then having some kind of acknowledgement of some kind of worth in the context of the task that you're doing, even though, you know that there are things that you don't necessarily do as proficiently as you'd like. So long story short, I will be in Geneva, Switzerland. I will be covering the Putin-Biden summit. Hopefully, these guys will come to some kind of resolution. Hopefully, I will be able to ask the question of Biden or Putin or both. But we're going to have to see how it pans out. I don't entirely know what I'm going to expect. So just giving you guys a heads up. But that's it. Let's go back to the show. Caitlyn Jenner asked whether or not she believes Donald Trump lost the race. What do you think her answer is?
A lot of Republicans in this country believe that Donald Trump won the election and not Joe Biden. Are you one of those people, one of those Republicans?
I'm not going to get into that. That election is over with. I think Donald Trump did do some good things. And what I liked about Donald Trump is he was a disruptor.
But did he win the election?
But he was a disruptor when he was president. I want to do the same thing. I want to go in and be a thoughtful disruptor in Sacramento. We need to change the system, and I want to change that system for the positive.
A lot of Republicans.
Joy Behar was disgusted by that response. She says, he was a disruptor, and I want to be. She's like, yeah, I don't blame her. I would do that. 500,000 people died under Trump's watch. And as those numbers tick up, those numbers belong to Trump. It wasn't like Joe Biden gets in and all of a sudden you start transporting that stuff to Biden. That was the malfeasance, the failure of the government of the United States being run by one Donald Trump that caused all of those deaths. You could say a medical system, fair enough, but at the end of the day, the person who was in charge, who had the capability of expanding the Defense Production Act for getting these people in line, for ensuring that people had money in their pockets over the course of the time frame without necessarily being forced back into their jobs. Yeah, that stuff was put at the top. Her saying that she wants to basically be Donald Trump, but not owning up to whether or not Donald Trump is right and repudiating America. For Donald Trump to be right, American Republic, democracy, Biden, all of these people, the government in and of itself is illegitimate. That's why I keep making the point of saying backing Trump in this is basically a repudiation of the U.S. government as an absolute or as an entity. And for Donald Trump to take power again, he's not taking power of America because he didn't win the processes necessary to take power in America. It's something else by definition. Caitlyn Jenner is a canary in a coal mine on some level. I keep making the point that whether or not Donald Trump and everybody is exactly in agreement with Donald Trump on this stuff is almost irrelevant. What matters is that these guys have lined up under Trump and have figured out that this is the guy where the energy is. This is the person who we're going to give our allegiance to. This is the person that we're not going to trespass on. And it's just so happened that trespassing is on whether or not America belongs to Donald Trump. It's astonishing. But these guys are coming out straight-faced, looking in the camera, and refusing to acknowledge that Trump lost. But think about what that means. You have an opposition figure in America that is basically saying he is the real president. He is the real leader and the person in charge. He was the one that was marginalized. And you can make an argument that says Democrats did the same thing to Trump, but I keep making the point that how they did it was different. They attacked this notion of Trump being helped by Vladimir Putin to change the mind of America. You're hitting at this point that Americans are useful idiots. Your attack here is basically on this notion that information was distributed that screwed up who people were going to vote for because those people were supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's the way they were running with it. They spared the electoral system, if you think about it. Even Bush v. Gore spared the electoral system. John Kerry, Bush, John Kerry was going to fight it, then turn around and say, okay, that's okay. They don't touch that. It's taboo. They don't touch it because what they realize is that if you have a situation where you're in one of these African countries and you have a person who decides that they don't want to stop, or they are just going to keep going, and they're going to be the opposition figure in perpetuity because they're going to scream that they won the race, what you're going to have is some people who not care who won the race, and those people are going to just back that guy who they like for whatever particular reason they like. It has nothing to do with the reality of who won. Same thing here. It is a very dangerous precedent. So for one Republican after the next to line up and be very uncomfortable with this question, not want to answer this question, or if they answer it, the election is over. Yeah. That's true. But who won? That's the question. And I suspect Caitlyn is not the only one that is in this mindset. I would wager to you that the majority of Republicans, whether they believe Trump or not, are still under that banner, and as such are still held almost in restraints by the ideas of one Trump. The key idea of that one Trump is that he didn't lose the race, that Biden didn't win it, that Biden is illegitimate, and that everything that has taken place up to this point is entirely illegitimate and stolen. One Republican after the next that is in the mainstream has lined up behind that person who is repudiating the government to which they have ascribed their loyalties. It's very weird. It's very bizarre. And in no way is this helpful or beneficial. You can have two religious groups that are full of shit. One believes in Jesus and angels and everything else. Are they ineffective? Yes. Are they useless on some level? Yes. But are they going to outright attack you and drink your blood? No. The party that decides we need to drink blood in order to be strong and vigorous. Yes, they're problematic. Both are religious beliefs. Both are problematic in regards to the way that they operate. But yeah, one can be more dangerous in a particular moment if they start appropriating ideas that are dramatically problematic in regards to the way that we operate in this country. So yeah, I have no issue at all in this kind of contextual setting saying, yeah, Democrats are damn dangerous when these guys are pushing Russiagate, or when Clinton is trying to get in office talking about she's going to knock a plane out the sky. Yes, I would look at that and say, these guys are the most dangerous in that situation. But that's a temporal phenomena that changes over time as each party appropriates certain ideas as they organize themselves against the other party. And in this case, what they've decided was that Trump is the fastest thing moving. Trump is the guy that was able to get more blacks and Hispanics in regards to the vote tally. Trump is who we're going to line up behind because we have no capacity to fight Biden in the way that he's been talking. That's their choice. That's their choice. Like, share, and subscribe. You can disagree with me on this, but I am damn right. It is greatly problematic when one of the major parties in the country repudiates the government to which those major parties are supposed to represent. And they're doing this all for the political ends of getting the allegiance to Trump and getting the supporters that back Trump. The key thing here is you don't know whether or not Trump expanded his vote tally in a natural sense. They expanded the vote tally because you had more people that were out there voting, and in which case you had more people that had the potential to vote for Trump. That's the same thing with Biden, however, where you had more people with the potential to vote for Biden. It's just expanded the number of people who are going to vote. That's not entirely indicative of Donald Trump in a typical election season expanding his margins any more than it is representative of Biden blowing the doors off the thing because he was so popular within the context of this election season. But nevertheless, that's what they're running with. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.